Welcome to today's edition of Mental Health Matters. Today, we're going to be talking about mental health in small businesses. I have Dennis Santiago on the show, and he's going to share his experience with this subject. Get you something to drink, get you a snack, and come on back. Good morning, Dennis. How are you doing?
Good morning. How are you today?
I'm okay. I'm a little bit tired. I tend to stay up late on the weekends by binge watching shows or just being out the house. So yeah, but I always take time to interview people on any mental health matter subject. So
Very good. Very good. Well, I'm looking forward to us having a nice chat.
yes. So why don't we start by you just telling me a little bit about yourself, your background, where you're from, and things like that.
Okay. Well, my name's Dennis Santiago, and in the context of today, I'm coming to you as the chairman of a nonprofit organization called
Mhm,
Humanizing Global Policy.
mhm.
And we started this foundation, uh, basically a group of us that have a series of vast experiences in various parts of the world. My own experience comes out of beginnings in aerospace and defense, and then about 35, 40 years in finance and banking. Um,
Nice.
and then about 5 years in the nonprofit world,
Nice.
working with bank regulators and nonprofit organizations in the community, um, looking for holes in the world. And my co-founder is a war correspondent who has basically been to every hot war zone on this planet up close and personal
Yeah.
over the space of about 20 years.
Okay. Dennis, were you born and raised in California or you migrated here?
Oh no, I'm a transplant. I was
Okay.
born and raised I was born in the Philippines
Oh, okay.
and transplanted to Orange County, California, at
Okay.
the ripe old age of 12, which basically means I went to high school
Okay.
in Southern California, Orange County. I'm a Fountain Valley boy, and then afterwards moved north of the Orange border to Los Angeles to begin my working career.
Oh, okay. Okay. So yeah, we're gonna definitely do some other shows. I could just hear you have a rich background. So a lot of hats you've worn throughout the year. You seem to be very passionate about mental health. Why is that?
Um, well, so one of the things that I've discovered that in order to survive in this world, you have to stay centered,
Yeah.
and um uh and you can get very very busy and you can lose yourself in things, and it's and I've seen it happen with so many people. I I mean, I've had a long career that, C-suite stuff and everything, and those are very, they can drag you all in.
Yeah.
I've also done the entrepreneur thing. And
Okay.
so, but you always have to make sure that you have a steady base
Yeah.
of mental stability to work from,
Yeah.
because whenever you start to lose it, it feels like you're spinning out of control.
Yeah.
That is no way to run a business. It's no way to have a family. It's no way
Yeah.
to respect yourself. So,
Yeah. Well, that just kind of segue us into what we're going to be actually discussing. So, what is mental health for small business, and why is that important, Dennis?
oh yeah, well, mental health for small businesses is, I consider it to be one of the key elements for life and death. It's
Mhm.
an existential component of being a small business. Um, I remember the first time I started the business, and the so the first feeling is, oh, this is going to be really, really great, right?
Yeah.
The next feeling is, what have I just done?
Yeah.
Because you've just taken your own money, right,
Yeah.
and thrown it into this thing, and you're not making any money yet,
Yeah.
right? And so the next feeling is, geez, it really is interesting to be walking around my little you know, in this case it started as a home business. But I had computer servers that were sitting in a bedroom. I mean, it was like absolutely as hokey dokey as it gets. And I'm sitting there going like, my family's depending on me to make this work. And so you just have this feeling that you're walking around the house with your intestines in your
Yeah.
hands
Yeah.
for, you know, until it starts to work.
Yeah.
Um, and um, and then it starts to work.
Yeah.
And eventually your wife goes like, I do not understand why a company that's made that is filed its income taxes using only black ink is
Yeah.
still in my living room.
Yeah.
Um, you know, so like, get out and go find a real office. And
Yeah.
then you got people, then all of a sudden I hit the same stuff that I ran into when I was in corporate
Yeah.
life, where um you're responsible for all those people,
Yes.
their lives, their children. You know, you've adopted them, and then you worry about them,
Yeah.
and you worry about whether or not it's going to work. And then there's the cycles of business that go up and down.
Hmm.
Um, all of those,
Yeah.
you know, you gotta have some sort of a deep down strength in order to make it work. In America, about 42% of small businesses that start don't make it.
Yeah.
That's a large attrition number.
Yeah.
And and when they don't make it, it it's causes all kinds of upheaval, broken dreams, um, broken families,
Yeah.
um, all of which can be avoided if you just keep your head on straight. You know,
Yeah.
even if the business dies, you know, that you can still wind up back and go like, we're all going to be okay because we're all still together, type thing. Um or if it's the worst case, I think, is if your business is barely working,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then it's just stressful as hell, man.
Yeah. Dennis, I want to dive a little bit more into your background story of your entrepreneurship experience. My first question is, what made you want to be a business owner? And what were some of the, besides, okay, let's start here. What made you want to be a small business owner, and what was your business actually about? Let's start there.
Oh, okay, yeah, well, that's a very good question. Because what got me there, so I had a bunch of corporate experiences where I
Yeah.
wound up being the guy that was doing project management, business development,
Hmm.
um you know, essentially inventing lines of business for companies.
Yeah.
uh, you know, in some cases they were um Department of Defense type lines of business, and others they were banking and finance type lines of business. And then and then for a while, the most interesting stint was the early days of the internet, where I got voluntold by my company to go help start internet businesses.
Oh,
This is back
wow.
in 1995, right? You know, and
Okay.
Al Gore was still calling it the information superhighway, and people were going like, "What the heck is that thing?" and
Yeah.
whatever. So I get through all that, and what that does is it teaches you the the skills to be bold.
Yes.
Eventually, after all is said and done, I had so much experience and so much of an outlet waiting to get out that I couldn't do anywhere else.
Yeah.
And friends were imploring me, you need to start this business so that this particular thing, which everybody needs,
Yeah.
has somebody doing it. So I said, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, what do I know? All right.
Yeah.
So I go, okay. And I started a business that whose first job was analyzing banks and analyzing companies for their safety and soundness.
Mhm.
So which is an arcane, highly technical, regulation intensive mathematical analyzing system
Mhm.
that very few people did. And the competitors to it were these big firms like Standard and Poor's and Moody's and I mean big powerhouse companies.
Yeah.
And so I said, I mean, so like I go like, well, the thing that really precipitated it was there was there were changes in bank regulations that basically said the banks had to be able to watch each other more transparently, and they needed a tool to go do it. And
Yeah.
everybody said, "Hey, Dennis, like you know how to make that tool, so go make that tool, and then we'll buy it." Right?
Yeah.
And to their credit, they actually did.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, and because my this was in 2003, and my rationale was, God, this will be kind of a nice little lifestyle business because like what could go wrong analyzing the safety and stability of U.S. banks in 2003 and going on for the next 20 years as a small business that specializes in analytical work, right? 2003, right? It was just 5 years before 2008.
Right.
Yeah, but the signs were already there,
Yeah.
right? And I remember talking to my partner that I started the business with, and because I'm the one doing all the analysis and code and all that kind of stuff, and I don't know 11,000 banks that I was watching at the time.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. There was a bunch of them, and a lot of them were dropping like were already being eaten up by mergers and acquisitions. But so the number was coming down. I think by the time we actually really got the system going, there were like 8,900 banks, and I had data on every single one of them.
Yeah.
And so my partner says, "How's the model coming along?" And I go, "Well, I see a light." He goes like, "Are we coming out of the tunnel?" And I go, "No, I'm kind of starting to think that might be a train coming through the tunnel right at us." So this is like 2004, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's a bit of stroke of luck to that, right? Because um by around I figured out what's going on. We
Yeah.
start selling the thing. Everybody in Wall Street and in the banking world goes like, um, no, your numbers can't be right.
Yeah.
You know, I remember having a meeting with the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank of New York, right? Which was an arm of the U.S. Treasury. No, not the U.S. Treasury of the U.S. Federal Reserve, that was run at the time by its division chief Timothy Geithner, who would eventually become U.S. Treasury Secretary during the 2008 crisis. I remember there's like 15, 20 analysts on the phone. with me, and they're going like, "Hey, Dennis, your numbers can't be right, man. If your numbers were right, we're going to have to subsidize every one of these large banks just to keep them alive."
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I go like, "You guys, you already know there's a problem, and you just told me what your solution is."
Yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
But, so the crisis hits, and then I'm selling these things like hotcakes, right? Government agencies are like signing up to long-term contracts. It was good. It was
Yeah.
good for a while, and then, then the crisis dissipates, and then people um move on to other things. But that's basically, I thought it was a backwater business,
Yeah.
but for some reason my ability to walk into the exact spot where a lightning rod is going to hit,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
is apparently one of my best skills. I have no idea how it happens. It just does.
Wow. So with all of that, because it seems like you had a really, really big responsibility. You talked about how you was responsible for other people and their families and things like that. How did that impact your mental health? And what did you do to provide yourself some form of self-care?
Ah, yeah, good question. I love your questions. So the way I had to maintain a life balance, and I didn't really maintain a life balance that was the best thing in the world, because like, so that business, once you start doing something like that
Yeah.
as an entrepreneur, I mean, it sucks you all in, right? I got this office. I had a cot in the office
Yeah.
so that I could sit there and watch machinery working, that I would program late into the night. And if you talk to anybody that has a high techy type of business, you can call them at 9, 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, and they'll answer the phone because they're still there. They're still working, right? Um, and so it's very, very intensive. What I really did to keep myself on an even keel was I made sure to do as much as I could for my family, which I don't think I did as much as I could.
Yeah.
But because you're driven, and then you're also concerned about the families of the people that are working for you, and trying to share all that around. And then um, I tried to maintain a good set of outside friends and hobbies that didn't care at all
Hmm.
about what that business was about. And so I would make sure to make time for my hobbies as a way to relieve myself of my stresses.
Yeah.
um it was still stressful. It was a time where my my wife eventually, she did at one point said, "We need to go to marriage and family therapy, you and me."
Yeah. Sure.
um to which because our children were also growing up at the time,
Yeah.
and she was going through a lot of changes at the
Yeah.
time. So I and you know and then I had to make time for that,
Yeah.
which is really, really important, right? Because this is the person you love the most in the world.
Yeah.
And which was kind of funny, because the the um the ultimate answer to that one was that we were two very, very polite people who let
Hmm.
stresses built up because we would refuse to fight with each other to let
Yeah.
energy out,
Yeah.
right? And so this therapist goes, I'm gonna share, I'm oversharing, but like,
No, 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 no.
so
This is good. Trust me, everything you're sharing is going to be beneficial for folks who watch this program. So I
yeah,
love
yeah,
it.
yeah. So this is like um love creating tension
Yeah.
stuff. So my wife and I, we really, really like each other, and we're really, really, like, we're a couple of Southern California kids at this point, right? With very
Yeah.
similar backgrounds, very similar ages, and we just don't like to fight with each other,
Yeah.
right? but there's all these tensions building up. I got this company, we got children growing up. You
No.
got, you know, my wife has gone through the whole journey of losing herself in her family and her children, and then
Yeah.
the children are starting to get old, and you know, and women have to go like come back and find themselves and all that kind of stuff, you know,
Yeah.
which is all part of the journey of life. I
Right.
mean, those marriage vows that you take, you
Yeah.
know, all those things that you say you will, I, richer, poorer, sickness, health, all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff,
Yeah.
like you start to figure out somewhere along the way, those are not promises. That's an
Yeah.
inventory
Yeah.
of
Wow.
what you're going to go through. You're
Yeah.
going to experience every single one of those things.
Yeah.
And so, um, so the therapist says, you two need to fight, right? So
Uh-huh.
here's me, Mr. Entrepreneur, I'm gonna put that on my list,
Yeah.
right? So I go, "Oh, yeah, I know.
Oh,
Insensitive. This is how guys think, which is
yeah.
why women go like, all you people are weirdos, right?
Yeah.
So I go home and I start to pick a fight with her and go like, because that's what the last therapy session said
Yeah.
we should do,
Yeah.
right? And she
Yeah.
goes like, no, 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 I'm not ready yet. We have to think about this. We have to,
Yeah.
I go, okay. And I sit there, I go like, all right, you got your resentments, you got me in the room, the whole thing. This is
Yeah.
what woman said to do. So,
Yeah.
here I am,
Yeah.
like, so, so she said, well, you're going to have to wait until I'm ready for it. Right. You know how long I waited?
Hello.
10 years. 10 years.
Yes.
While in her mind, she stewed, right?
Yeah.
Getting
Yeah.
angrier
Yeah.
and more frustrated and more focused in what was going on. And I'm watching the love of my life lose herself because she's now coming out of the intensity of being the mother of young children, where
Yeah.
she has lost herself, right? And um it's just from a personal mental journey, I'm
Yeah.
watching it and it's painful to watch,
Yeah.
right? You ask me, like, what do I do when I'm not in front of my computer looking at code or talking to clients or whatever, I'm worried about this the I'm worried about finding the girl that I originally fell in love with.
Yeah.
Because I know she's still in there somewhere, but she's
Right.
buried under all these layers of
Yeah.
mom and frustration and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so the day comes, right? I say something and she explodes, right? And it's like the teeth are gritting, she's having the full conniption thing
Yeah.
going, and I'm standing there and I'm remembering what the therapist said, now a decade ago.
Yeah.
And the thing going through my mind the entire time was, this is exactly what you've been waiting for.
Yeah.
Whatever you do not crack a smile
Yeah.
right now, or you will completely blow this moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, so there's all that kind of stuff
Yeah.
that goes along with it. And part of it is the pressure that's created because there's all these other draws on your life, hers, mine, the children's,
Yeah.
the people that work for me, the outside world,
Yeah.
and then, and what, and one of the jobs that I had with this company, I wound up with a contract with the Securities and Exchange Commission. I had their list of companies that they were
Wow.
carefully watching during the 2008 crisis
Wow.
in my computers with a contract to report to them every month how those guys were doing to the best of my ability.
Yeah. Wow.
And I had to keep that list quiet,
Yeah. Wow.
right? Because
Yeah.
it's like, who's the government watching? Because these are the people that if they go down, the whole country goes down even
Right.
deeper, right?
Right.
Yeah, and I'm sitting there going like, well, that's a job,
Yeah. Wow.
And
I know that was extremely, it would have been stressful for me. It would have been stressful just to have that information, knowing that you have to, keep it confidential and things like that. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, that would have
Well,
been
it wasn't, yeah, it wasn't that stressful for me, right?
really,
Yeah, no, no. And because that goes, because like 20 years earlier when I was a young kid, I accidentally wrote a bunch of computer models and did a whole bunch of analysis and wound up essentially so remember remember in the 1980s. Yeah, you do. You're yeah,
yeah,
you're old enough like me, right? So the Cold War is
yeah,
on, right? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Remember Star Wars?
yes.
Not the movie, the Reagan thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Vaguely, but yes.
yeah, missile defense, right?
Mm,
So so we weren't exactly sure what we were gonna do with that one.
mhm. Yeah,
And so I wrote this computer model and wrote up this analysis as part of this big huge government contract, right?
mhm.
And because the government was desperately trying to figure out a way to convince the Russians to come to the negotiating table,
Yeah,
and um, and they weren't succeeding. And so they gave me this job, and and I said, well, this isn't like a big job, and like what computers do I get? And he said, well, you can have a PC, right?
yeah.
Remember those very early IBM PCs, right?
Hmm.
Not a lot of
Yeah.
horsepower,
Yes.
right? But they said this is the only computer we could spare because all the other computers are busy doing real stuff like designing missiles and whatever contraptions and stuff like that. So like do the best you can with that thing, right? So and I'm like 24, 25 years old, like what the heck.
Yeah.
Um, and so I write this thing and I write it up, and it's the first chapter of the report that was required that all of the contractors, the big contractors, and this was every aerospace company out there had a
Yeah.
contract. And it was, what's your strategy for winning a way to defend the US, right? So and I'm going like, okay, fine. I talked to a whole bunch of people, and I gathered a whole bunch of information and put everything down that they had told me, turned it into a computer model, random models, got the output, put it into a thing, wrote it up in a section. Nobody else in the entire corporation cared because they thought that's the throwaway chapter, right? That's the boilerplate before the good stuff of here's the cool equipment we can make that you are going to be willing to pay billions of dollars for, right? Money,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So they turned this thing in, and it had like handwritten charts
Yeah.
in the report, right? And then like a couple of weeks later, I get this call. Uh, and the company I was was Rockwell International. So I get this call from the chief scientist, right, of the corporation. So like
Uh-huh.
every scientist and engineer in this corporation with tens of thousands of employees eventually reports up to this guy. And he
Wow.
calls up. His name's Mike, right? And he calls up and he goes like, Dennis. I go, yes, Mike. Yeah, I'm 24 years old, right? Like the chief scientist of the corporation calls you up on your phone in your office. He goes, "Are you sure about what you put inside that that thing that we included in our report?" And I go like, "Yeah, I think so." And,
Yeah.
and he goes, "Well, Casper Weinberger, who was the Secretary of Defense at the time, wants to know if the Rockwell International Corporation stands behind its recommended strategy for the United States of America to defend itself against nuclear attack."
Wow. Wow.
And he says,
Wow.
"Are you sure about what you put in that thing?" And I go like, "I think so."
Yeah.
you know, talk about pressure starting to build, right? And
Yeah.
he goes like, well, just to let you know, very casually, um, every aerospace company, every aerospace subcontractor, and every defense related analytical house has been tasked to replicate your study to make sure that it's right.
Yeah. Okay.
And he goes like, and if you're wrong, I'm going to have your little ass.
Yeah.
To which the only answer I came up with on
Yeah.
the phone at the time,
Yeah.
this is real. Remember when we had real phones on our desks and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
It's like, I go like, that seems fair, Mike.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was right.
Yeah.
And to this day, that is the strategy of the United States of America on how to defend itself.
That's awesome. That is
Yeah. So
awesome.
you talk about clutch, right?
Yeah.
So, so like 2008 financial crisis compared to changing the course of human history and the Cold War, which was an event on the same level as the fall of the Roman Empire, as far as danger to the world or direction of the world goes.
Yeah.
2008 crisis, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, not that it takes away from the fact that it was a really bad moment in U.S. history, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think a lot of my life experiences prepared me for my next life experiences. So
Yeah.
it wasn't an overwhelming mental thing at each step. And
Yeah.
I'm actually grateful for all of the experiences that I had because they helped me. They help me even today, which
Yeah.
is, now it's like helping nonprofit CDFIs figure out what they're going to do in terms of serving the community, which is a hard job.
Yeah.
But and some people would say that's so boring compared to someone else. Next thing I go, no, it's not. I mean, this is like how do you help organizations help real people, ordinary
Yeah.
people in everyday America?
That's it for this edition of Mental Health Matters. If you enjoyed this particular show, or if you would like a copy of this show, or if you would like to be a guest on our show, please dial 916-366-4600. Thank you.